Audience, please be seated. Honorable dignitaries on the dais, esteemed speakers, delegates, invitees, and everyone present here. A very good morning to one and all. I, Hafsa, a fourth-year student of University Law College, Bangalore University, consider it my privilege to be the master of ceremony for today's event. It is rightly said that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Today, we gather here to inaugurate the 2 days Multidisciplinary International Conference on Gender, Power and Technology being organized by the UGC Center of Women's Studies, Bangalore University. This conference serves as a crucial space to explore how technology, power structures and gender intersect in our digital lives. From cyber feminism to gender activism, gender justice to digital safety, may our discussion today and tomorrow shape the discourse of these pressing issues. Without any further ado, I would like to invite Professor Dr. N. Dasraj, Principal, University Law College and Department of Studies in Law, Bangalore. With this, I request the technical team to please pay the Nadagite before we could start with the welcome address. I request all the audience to please raise.
Usha Yojana. This conference is organized in collaboration and cooperation with the UGC Center for Women's Studies, Bangalore University, Karnataka State, Akka Mahadevi, Women's University, Vijaypura, and the University Law College and Department of Studies in Law, Bangalore University, Bangalore. We are very delighted to welcome today's chief guest, respected Secretary, Government of Karnataka, Department of Electronics, Information Technology, Biotechnology and Science and Technology. We welcome you, madam, with full of joy and happiness. We are highly delighted and joyful for the gracious presence of two encouraging and supporting personalities for conducting this international conference. Firstly, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Karnataka State Women's University, Vijaypura, Professor Shanta Devi, madam. We welcome you, madam. Welcome to yet another personality who is presiding over this function, Honorable Vice Chancellor of Bangalore University and Patron-in-Chief of this conference, Professor S.M. Jaikara. We welcome you, sir. We welcome today's keynote speaker, Dr. Anita Gurumurthy, founder member, executive director, IT for Change. We welcome you, ma'am. We welcome Professor Panditji, the coordinator of the Pradhan Mantri Usha program of Bangalore University. We welcome you, sir. We welcome Professor Lakshmi Devi Y, Chairman and Director of Ahalya PG Women's Studies, Sri Akka Mahadevi Mahila University, Vijaypura. Welcome you, ma'am. We welcome our Chairman of Department of Studies, University Law College and University Law College, Professor Satish Gowda, for being present in this program. How can we forget the organizing secretary and most important person who is responsible for organizing this 2 days international conference? That is none other than the organizing secretary, the coordinator of the UGC Center for Women's Studies, Bangalore University, Dr. Sudeshna Mukherjee. We welcome you, ma'am. We welcome the members of the syndicate, the academic councils, head of the departments of different PG studies, directors, coordinators, principals, deans of different faculty of Bangalore University. Then thereafter, we welcome Professor V. Sudesh, the Dean Faculty of Law, Bangalore University, Bangalore, for his gracious presence here. We welcome Professor C.D. Venkatesh, UGC Center for Women's Studies, Bangalore University. Welcome you, sir. We welcome Dr. M. Siddhappa, UG Center for PG Studies. Both these are the conveners of this international conference. We welcome the press reporters of the Bangalore University. We welcome the print and electronic media. We welcome the respected teachers of both the Bangalore University, Sri Akka Mahadevi Women's University, Vijaypura, research scholars, students, friends, and invitees. We also welcome the international resource persons who are presenting their papers in different plenary sessions. We welcome all the participants across India who have come to present their papers and contribute to the existing knowledge on women, gender power and technology. I thank once again all of you for being present here. Jai Hind, Jai Karnataka. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a warm welcome, sir. I cordially invite our principal, University Law College, Bangalore University, Honorable Mr. Dashrath sir as well. Please give a big round of applause. Thank you all. To provide an overview of the conference with its purpose and objectives, I cordially invite the backbone of this event, Dr. Sudeshna Mukherjee, Coordinator and Associate Professor for Center of Women's Studies, to share her insights. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Afsa. So, honorable dignitaries, esteemed scholars, activists, policymakers, and all our distinguished guests on and off the dais, it's my privilege to introduce you to this international conference on gender, power, and technology, addressing violence and intersectionality in the digital age, here in this vibrant city of Bangalore. So this gathering brings together some of the finest mind and most passionate voices from across the globe to discuss one of the most pressing issues of our time, the evolving nature of gender power structure in the digital age. In the 21st century, technology has become both a force of empowerment and the site of systemic oppression. While digital platforms have transformed communication, activism, governance, and education, they have also given rise to new forms of gender-based violence, discrimination, and surveillance. This multidisciplinary international conference seeks to critically examine these intersections of gender, power, and technology, exploring how digital landscape both reinforce and challenges the existing inequalities. Despite offering unprecedented opportunities for connection and advocacy, technology has also intensified social disparities, deepened biases, and expanded the reach of online violence, particularly affecting women, gender minorities, and other vulnerable groups. The internet, though a powerful tool for progress, has increasingly become a battleground where misogyny, harassment, and discrimination persist with alarming impunity. This program is primarily funded under PM Usha, and one of the mandates of that PM Usha scheme is holding multidisciplinary programs. So this particular conference is not only multidisciplinary, but multi-institutional. University Law College and Akka Mahadevi Women's University, Vijayapura. I am deeply indebted to my very good friend, Professor Lakshmi Devi from Akka Mahadevi Women University, Vijayapur, and my forever supporting seniors from the University Law College, like Professor Sudesh, who is the Dean of the University Law College, Professor Dashrath, Principal of the Law College, and my dear friend, Professor Satish Gowda, who is the Chairman of the PG Department of the University Law College, for their unconditional support and valuable advice at every stage. My colleagues from Center for Women's Studies, Dr. Siddhappa and Professor Venkatesh, was always there and with their unwavering support. So this conference brings together scholars, researchers, activists, and legal experts, technologists, and policymakers to explore the gender dimensions of the digital space. By fostering an interdisciplinary dialogue, we aim to interrogate the complexities of power in this digital age and propose strategies for inclusive and equitable technological futures. With the intersectional lens is a very important for this conference, because the experiences of the digital violence are not uniform. They are shaped by the race, class, caste, sexuality, disability, and other identities. A Dalit woman journalist facing online abuse, a queer activist targeted by the cyber crooks. So, or you can see that rural women struggling with the digital access. All these experiences demand nuance and the contextualized responses. In this age of internet is also a commodity, not just a tool, shaping the access of information and opportunities and resources. Its availability is dictated by economic and social privilege, deepening the digital divide. So, at this conference is not just analyze these challenges, but to imagine solutions, legal frameworks that protect platforms that are accountable, policies that ensure digital inclusivity, the collective strategies to reclaim technology as a space of liberation rather than oppression. We must ask, how can we build safe digital ecosystem? How can technology itself become a force of gender justice rather than a tool for reinforcing hierarchies? Over the next 2 days, we will engage in critical conversation, share insights from the diverse perspectives, and forge collaboration that will help shaping a more equitable digital future. Let this conference be a space for dialogue, solidarity, and action, where scholarship meets activism, policy meets lived experience, and technology meets humanity. With that, I warmly welcome you once again, and let us begin this journey together towards a more just and inclusive digital world. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your valuable words, ma'am. With that, with a great pleasure, I invite all the dignitaries on the dais and off the dais to join hands in watering the sampling, symbolizing the beginning of the event and path towards knowledge, wisdom, and enlightenment. Dignitaries, please. Thank you, dignitaries. Thank you all. With that, I take the honor to introduce our eminent keynote speaker, Madam Anita Gurdumurthy ma'am, the Executive Director of IT for Change since 2000, and a prominent researcher and a policy advocate focusing on technology, development, and social justice with a feminist perspective. Ma'am advises the UN and Paris Peace Forum on digital governance. Her research focuses on digital economies, online violence, and women's access to technology in the South, in the global South. As a prolific author of various reports and books, she has actively been a champion in the digital justice through policy engagement, research, and civil society leadership. Notably, ma'am has co-founded the JustNet Coalition and remains a key voice in shaping global digital policy to all of us. With such an inspiration, let's extend a warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Ms. Anita Gurdumurthy ma'am. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, what an honor. This is my first time at the university, and I hope it's not my last. It's extremely humbling to be in this August gathering. Also stalwarts of the Indian feminist movement, and therefore life comes a full circle. It's amazing to sit in front of people whose works have inspired your own. The thing about violence against women is we hold conferences, but it's a very sobering kind of thing, right? I mean, you cannot talk about these topics without also feeling that it's deeply personal. It's deeply intimate. And so at some level, I think the 2 days of the conferencing, the conversations should really enable us to think about the empirical context, think about the theoretical breakthroughs that are possible, legal frameworks, and arrive at something that can positively change society. I do think that some of what I'm going to share is really, this is going to question the way in which society is organized through a particular form of digitality under capitalism. So with those words, let me begin. And maybe I could just say next when I need to change the slides. For now, this is fine. Yeah. So I just want to start with the whole idea that gender power has been resocialized through the digital order, and there are characteristic markers all of us, lives beholden to the network, waking up with our mobile phones, going to bed with them, surveilled bodies, of course, and intelligent economics. Some of you may have heard of the nudge theory, right? How do you make money through nudges? And of course, datafied politics, elections that are remote controlled. So the human condition today is a seamless intertwining of the digital architecture and the social. And what we might understand as post-human materialities are structured by protocols of digital technologies and conventions that are part of our social institutions. So it's a kind of, what the theoreticians will say is a dialectic. And this reflects a massive re-socialization of gender power and a new legitimacy, unfortunately, for sexism and misogyny in the public sphere. Of course, I mean, this is really not to paint a picture of dystopia, but to actually draw attention to how a certain path dependency is leading us to a technosocial existence and coexistence, which could be otherwise. As we will see, unlike the early predictions of Donna Haraway, the Cyborg Manifesto, or Global South scholars like Fatima Mernissi, who spoke about the way in which the patriarchal sphere is getting rattled by the advent of the internet. Unfortunately, 25, 30 years down the line, 3 decades down the line, the emancipation in the online world seems to have been rendered a somewhat naive prediction in the face of what we are actually seeing today in this new sociality. Algorithms that drive today's internet are structured in a way that supports dominant narratives that reflect hegemonic frameworks. So what is all of this? Well, I think to start with, for some who may be technologists, I'm not very sure who are technologists in this group, the openness of the internet, interoperability of platforms, that's a very, very much wanted value, but that is still not adequate. It is because openness is a fallacy, and social markers of power are very, very deep-seated in the open spaces, or the so-called open spaces of the internet. In the policy circles, you often hear, at least in the international discussions and diplomacy, the idea of the internet of trust. So cybersecurity is very important, obviously, but the internet of trust is seen as a technical idea where this technical architecture of its openness can and will be enough to diffuse information, catalyze connection, and build a world of trust. But this kind of digital determinism, technological determinism, has ignored power. And the fact that diverse and inclusive digital societies are possible is only in the realm of possibility yet. The open internet may seem like a conduit for progressive politics, and the technocratic worldview would like us to believe that the internet has already ushered in horizontal connections, flexible social structures, etc. And like Sudeshna said at the beginning, that's far from the truth. We know that bodies matter, we know that gender power matters. And therefore, public scrutiny, surveillance, and loss of autonomy are as much a reality as horizontal connections. I also want to draw attention, especially for scholars of the law, to the metaphor of the marketplace of ideas, which often comes in debates on intellectual property, right? The marketplace of ideas, and we have to keep it open, right? And innovation has to be kept open. This we constantly encounter in economics and legal studies, where everyone is seen to be benefited by free and unregulated exchange of ideas. But this does not really obtain in practice because the internet is also framed by economics and is indeed an infrastructure. So the power that is contingent on a range of markers such as religion, class, caste, and gender, and sexual orientation is what I'm going to talk about today. Next slide, please. No, please don't go ahead. I will let you know when I need. I want slide number 3. Yes, I will let you know when I need the slides changed. Yeah. So social media platforms need to be conceived as the new infrastructures of communication. Social media is not an app. So an app is a platform, and a platform is a social infrastructure, an economic infrastructure, a communicative infrastructure. And what is the difference between an artifact or a gadget and an infrastructure. And infrastructure actually shapes the way in which you design your existence, the way you live, right? So these are systems that reorder social relations and communicative protocols and the very terrain of politics. Sensational, toxic, and harmful narratives that garner attention, which in a patriarchal world means that stereotyped, sexist, and misogynistic narratives proliferate. As they famously say in feminist circles in the tech policy spaces, sexism is not a bug in the system. It's actually an inbuilt feature of the system. Because if you didn't have sexism, you won't have amplified content, you won't have virality, you won't have clicks, and you cannot run the clickbait economy. So online gender-based violence, all of this ranges from non-consensual intimate image distribution, stalking to trolling, gender-based hate speech and disinformation. It's a range of things. It's not just one thing. And most commonly, women targeted by acts of online gender-based violence undergo severe mental trauma and face personal and professional losses and stigmatization. And research shows that often the very intent of sexualized abuse online is to invoke a feeling of shame and to intimidate women into leaving the online public sphere. And indeed, many women who face such trauma consciously reduce their presence on digital platforms. So it's a kind of a self-censorship mechanism. What digital misogyny does is that it creates a chilling effect. It erodes free speech, and as I said, it leads to self-censorship. And like Foucauldian thought, you don't need to enact the threat of violence. The threat itself will do. What this implies has profound consequences for who speaks, who is heard, who gets to frame the narrative, and what passes for democratic discourse. Online gender-based violence is a powerful tool of patriarchal censorship, silencing women, particularly those in marginalized positions, pushing them away from public life. This proliferation of gendered forms of disinformation and gendered hate speech comprises a systematic assault on women's human rights in digital society. The next, slide 4. Yes. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a study we did, and the report came out in 2022. And this was a research study that my colleagues and I undertook at IT for Change of problematic speech, hateful and abusive speech on Twitter. At that time, for those of us who may be aware of technology, the APIs, the programmer interfaces, were still available for us to scrape data from the back end of Twitter. Of course, data is not so easily available now anymore. And for a very, very long time now, Meta and erstwhile faced quantitative coding plus qualitative investigations. We looked at the pervasive nature of online gender-based violence. Next slide, please. Yes. A little bit about the methodology. We used purposive sampling. It was a sample of women politicians who were active in public political life, members of parliament, members of legislative assembly, members of political parties, political commentators, journalists and activists across political and ideological spectrums. So we didn't look at any one political party, we looked at all political parties. And we also included MPs and MLAs and politicians who did not have a Twitter handle, which means they or their offices were not tweeting, but obviously their names appeared in the tweets, which I don't know if any of you use Twitter anymore in the age of Instagram. But there are some things called mentions, which means that you can tweet about someone and they will be mentioned through hashtags, handles on tweets. So this allowed us to study how the subject lives or is present in the online public sphere, even without their active participation. A simple example to give would be Jaya Bachchan, for instance. So she didn't at that time have her own Twitter account, but certainly she was mentioned very, very often, and there used to be extreme hate directed at her, invoking her husband's name, as if she is not capable of standing on her own feet as a politician. So after the selection of the sample, mentions directed at the women were collected from their public Twitter profiles for a period of 1 week between 26 November and 3rd December 2021. And this yielded 30,460 mentions of women in the sample. So from this 30,000, we then painstakingly coded and brought it all down to 18,000 mentions, which were then coded into 19 categories of hate speech. And next slide. So slide number 6. Yes. So what did we find? We found pervasiveness of misogynistic speech. The broadest finding, and this is just 1 week of data. I'm talking about just 20 women in political life, their handles, their mentions, 1 week's data. So it was a random week. And imagine if it's actually a week when something is happening in parliament, and you can imagine, there is, of course, there's always ephemerality on online spaces, but still. The broadest finding is that all women in our sample, regardless of whether they belong to the opposition or ruling parties, whether perceived to be dissenters or sympathetic to the current dispensation, received some amount of abuse on the platform. None of the women in our sample were spared entirely. The second we found is herd aggression. While we did certainly come across many abusive messages that were threats of violence, it was trolling in the nature of tongue-in-cheek jokes, remarks that are really directed at, somewhat making fun, that were far more common. So this fun culture of vitriol and abuse is rampant on social media platforms. Of course, it was rampant then on Twitter, through the sharing of misogynistic memes and wordplay. So you coin these strange words to characterize women. We also found the prevalence of a kind of herd aggression where trolls banded together to reply to certain posts. So it was not one person, but if there was one person posting, that person could actually add, or reference somebody else that they knew would troll the same person. So that would amplify this kind of posts, exploiting the platform's affordances of anonymity and virality to hijack the public narrative. So you could use platform affordances of tagging people to amplify hate. The third finding was about intersectional violence. The nature and amount of abuse women faced varied significantly depending on their identity and social locations, because the bunch of women that we actually selected who were active on Twitter included people from different religious and regional locations. And this revealed an overarching subtext of what historians and sociologists refer to as Brahminical patriarchy. And the fourth is the indelible role of platform architecture. So all of this is not accidental. It is contingent on a particular form of platform design, particular form of design of social media interfaces which prioritize virality and irrationality at the expense of democratic discourse. So it needn't be designed this way, but for the moment, this is all we have. So we found that protocols enable the creation of communicative registers that routinize censure and abuse against women. So women are pulled up. So you may be an MP, but you might be pulled up by trolls, resulting in a gendered restructuring of the public space. We found that the ubiquity of misogynistic speech on social media points to the need to destabilize the idea and the understanding we have of gendered violence historically. That we need to be attentive to the ways in which the affordances of these platforms produce new and unprecedented vulnerability in women. So techno-social systems reshape our existence and construct a reality in which we have new vulnerabilities for women. Slide 7. I'd like to focus a little bit more on the trolling. Constant trolling and violence directed at women in the online public sphere tend to be highly choreographed affairs. I don't have to educate anyone here on this. What people call the troll armies, right? It's an industry scale operation. You just put 10 computers and 10 people in front of the computers and say, if this woman, speaks something or says something, make sure to distort it and send it out. So it's a kind of choreography that shapes the rhythms of public debate online, what we now recognize as largely the troll army. Though widely regarded as less serious forms of hostile or violent conduct, trolling derives its toxicity and potency precisely from its volume and frequency rather than only its substantive content. So it's really a kind of way by which you make a mountain out of a molehill, but you make sure that you put it out there and it can actually become viral. So it's like, you know what? She said this is blue. She said this is blue? Oh, she said this is blue. And then that is getting viralized as if that's an offense in and of itself. So central to the birth of the online troll is the techno design and gamification of public discourse. So it's very important to understand this all. The brains that like to normalize sexism and misogyny online are the kind of people who understand the rhythms and the breadth and spirit of these platform architectures. So they're really able to understand what to do with retweets, what to do with impressions, what to do with the quantitative metrics, what to do with likes or forwards or whatever, right? So how do you manipulate these things in order to make sure that the end result is misogyny? Aggressors are afforded the publicity they desire, while their anonymity shields them from facing any consequences. The targets of the aggression, on the other hand, are often backed into a corner and rendered hyper-invisible or hyper-visible, as the case may be. So you might, this entire idea that you're always visible and you're targeted is only true sometimes. It's equally possible that you're invisible, but there is actually a lot of viral messaging around your personality, your behavior, etc. So such inauthentic user behavior. So this user behavior is not authentic. We are not necessarily forwarding something to someone that we intend to forward it to. We are just forwarding it in a many-to-many architecture. And this inauthentic user behavior has produced status quoist content and engagement, which is about coordinated attacks against women dissenters, journalists, and members of opposition parties in particular, and amplified the algorithmic reach of such content. The most common tactic we observed was very, very unsophisticated, with multiple anonymous accounts simply retweeting one abusive tweet in reply to a tweet by one of our subjects. So one of our subjects, the 20 people that we studied, would tweet something, and then there would be anonymous users who pounce on that tweet and decide to do something with it. And so they would simply copy and post that multiple times, one below the other, by different anonymous accounts. So these forms of targeting are not veiled or subtle at all, and they are not intended to evade detection, right? Sometimes you see that, right? If you want to write a spelling of rainbow, you say R, then XXXSBOW, so that the algorithm doesn't spot that you're actually referring to a word that the community standards of that platform would prevent you from using. So you can't use a cuss word, for instance. You can't use a bad word, for instance. So you use something else, @XX, exclamation, but you're actually essentially using an expletive, right? But what we actually found is people were not even hiding or doing any of these things in this way. It was very, very uncouth. It was very basic. And it was trolls that were banding together to reply only to certain posts of certain politicians. Next, 8. Slide 8. Yes. So what were the patterns? Shame and honor. Basically, the political position and opinion was that the woman had dragged her husband's name through dirt. So, I mean, you're a politician, but your actions are judged by, what honor or shame you have brought to your spouse. Caste-based hate speech. We found the use of casteist slurs, chamar, kamini, unveiled forms of casteism, and casteist stereotyping, which is really not direct attacks, but stereotyping, that you have no brains because you're Dalit. We also found anti-Muslim hate. One category of tweets involved the use of hyper-nationalistic and othering speech that attacks Muslim women in public life, asserting an exclusive claim over national identity, using terms such as Gaddar, traitor. And we found objectification. Exceedingly common trope was to view women solely as objects of male desire, reducing them to their bodies. And also censuring women and attacking them through use of invectives and sexualized slurs. And very, very sadly, some women are considered undesirable by trolls that received misogynistic hate, which took the form of comments expressing disgust or repulsion about their appearance. Slide number 10. So we now go into the idea of gendered bodies online. So what the Twitter study shows us is really that the matrix of domination that operates against women in cyberspace is intersectional. And this is about a hierarchy of gendered bodies, which is about valuing, devaluing, valorizing, demonizing, women depending on their particular social locations and assertions of public political identity. Other studies have also demonstrated that women from minority religious groups, Dalit women, and non-heteronormative women are at a higher risk of being trolled and harassed. Okay. So, what I wanted to say and draw your attention to is the next slide. I'll just take 5 minutes and wind up. Yeah. So what we actually see is that as the effects of digital networks, slide 11 please, and datafication manifests on culture, and as subjectivity and body unfold, it's increasingly clear that cyberspace is produced in a mutually constitutive exchange between network data and the body. So the fluid spaces of the digital dissolve the boundaries of our bodies, enhancing and extending them in relation to other bodies. So we are actually seeing the way AI and social media are being used together to push a form of oppression that combines gender, religion, and power. And this is particularly, noteworthy in immersive, social media, right? Metaverse, for instance. Slide 12. So the public discourse on image-based sexual abuse, which is hardest to regulate, is about a tale of morality and propriety centered on the actions and choices of the victim survivor. So constantly you blame the victim survivor. You say that she provoked, and this is of course not new by any means. And in a recent context, we saw a politician, in the country where the media, law enforcement agencies, and civil society were completely unprepared to handle incidents of how image-based violence was circulating in the media, which is, of course, enormously traumatizing for women. We also conducted another research, if you're interested, about 100 cases that were in different courts in the country about judicial attitudes to online gender-based violence. It's a very important study where we actually found that in the courts, judges are not really trained to have an understanding of the nature of platform sociality. Courts treat online violence as less serious. They say, this is not physical violence, it's only online. And they dismiss acts of trolling and doxing due to lack of statutory provisions. Because the law doesn't exist, your experience doesn't exist. And adopt a patronizing and protectionist tone in the judicial observations and orders. The next. I'll try to hasten this. I just wanted to draw your attention to this entire idea of the manosphere, right? All of us understand that there are bros online, right? I mean, these are homosocial spaces, only men's spaces. Of course, the corner pans shop always existed. These are places where men go to smoke and have a chat. But online, these are terribly dangerous. I mean, I just like to point to the example of Andrew Tate, who's emblematic of a culture of algorithmic affordances, actually. I mean, he's nobody, but algorithms have made him who he is. And of course, he now thinks that he is shaping democratic discourse. And all of this, you have to think about WhatsApp forwards, subreddits, news feeds, troll armies, propaganda bots, etc. So this is really the nature of the violence. The next slide, slide 14. I have already drawn your attention to immersive media and the reproduction of social power. This is really, really very scary because this is visceral. And we found that when you actually have female avatars online, men go in online and grope, sexually assault, and stalk. And I really think that this is part of the challenge for the law in the 21st century. The next slide, please, slide 15. So what is this state of entrenched violence doing to female subjectivity? What is it doing to feminist expression? So the prevailing heteronormative norm in social media often means that algorithms will prioritize contents that project a relatable femininity, acceptable femininity. All influencers online are doing something that's extremely pleasing and extremely conforming with the kind of tropes of femininity that men like. You cannot catch an influencer stand up and question patriarchy because then they will never be an influencer in the first place, right? So you cannot cross these boundaries. If you cross these boundaries, you do so under your peril. And therefore, visibility and vulnerability are just, what separates visibility and vulnerability is a thin line. You can be visible, but any action that upsets the patriarchs can make you vulnerable. Next slide. Slide 16, yes. So all of this and the research that we've done at IT for Change shows us how patriarchal gender narratives are not only pre-coded into online communicative environments, but equally a capitalist design that wants an ad economy to thrive, right? It wants you to click, 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 doom scroll, familiar? So it wants you to do that to reify retrograde gender norms and practices. All of this is an emerging sociality we should be concerned about. And inhabiting visual cultures that afford them the space for self-exploration and intimacy, all young people, young women in this crowd face a double bind. Digital spaces where all of you find affirmation and recognition, but at all times you must, I'm sure, balance your self-exploration and the quest for intimacy and social approval, right? So you have to negotiate a just right sexuality. It has to be just perfectly right, right? It has to please and tick all the check boxes. The next one. I come towards the end of my presentation. I want to draw attention to platform impunity. Why is all of this happening? Because the laws of the land somehow are not adequate when you have big tech which will not listen to your constitution, right? You have your constitutional principles. You actually have your laws. You have intermediary guidelines. Even so, big tech will never listen. They won't pay taxes. And they will do precisely what they like. And this is part of the problem because they will have like a button where you might complain, but nobody knows where that button is going. And in any case, they will change their stances. Recently in Silicon Valley, after the current election, a very large big tech company came up and said, yesterday we said that we will not produce technology for warfare, but that pledge we are removing because now we want to produce technology for warfare. So it's seasonal. And depending on the profit and depending on the market, you know, depending on which jurisdiction they are operating in, they keep changing their views. So this impunity is really the problem. Next slide, slide 18. I don't know if you know, many of you are young, but 2018, Jack Dorsey came to India. So there was this smash patriarchy, Brahminical patriarchy. He took a picture and all that. And after that, he was trolled and trolled and trolled, and then he was called up and, you know, there was an inquiry against him. So this entire idea of standing by certain politics when it is convenient to you, then saying, oh, well, you know, we never meant it. We never meant to be feminist. You know, see, these clarifications are issued. I just wanted to draw your attention. And finally, I just want to go to the next slide, the last one, 19. Just to say that, what does it say about freedom of speech, right? Because if hate speech is so prevalent, you know, if it's prolific, it's all over, and in our behavior, our cognitive interpretations of this world that we inhabit, our cognition is constantly being pushed to a clickbait type of behavior. What do, right? Because you also have to protect freedom of speech. And oftentimes, because state and non-state actors like to control women and, you know, marginalized genders, it's always possible that a system of authoritarianism will take away our free speech, right? But bad speech really affects women disproportionately, and it affects some women damningly. So this question about which women is also equally important to ask. And I would say that hate speech is not an exercise of freedom, but it's an attempt to infringe the freedom of others. And this we must remember. And traditional free speech theories, heavily based on a presumption of cognitive autonomy, do not hold today when our cognitive autonomy is under siege. So we may need to think about our foundational rights. Professor Tarun Khaitan has proposed something which I like very much. He says that in your constitutional principles, you have equality, liberty, and fraternity. Maybe you have to add another principle called verity, which is truth. So we talk about fake news and misinformation, right? How are you going to take this to a court of law? Because someone in the court of law has to say, truth is important. And if you spread misinformation, you're not going to be booked under some small civil or criminal offense. This is an anti-constitutional practice. So in order to do that, he suggests that we include the idea of verity and truth into the principles of the Constitution so that we are adequate to the digital age. And this means that the right to publicness is available to everybody, right? Everybody has the right to publicness. And this is really important so that nobody is, and we live in a culture where we're constantly having to manage our online personas as women. And that's true for me, and it's true for every woman here and outside. I just want to close here with the last slide, just to read this out to you. The architecture of virtual social space is decidedly building a generation of women and men whose everyday lives lie between the poles of the precious disinhibition that women seek. Women seek disinhibition. They want to let their hair down, right? They want to be online. They want to chat up. They want to connect. But there is toxic disinhibition that men display. What do you do? Because when you go online, men are saying, are you available for a date? And then, of course, many other questions which you never invited. So the challenge for us is this. Can we reimagine the terms on which public discourse is mediated and organized on the internet so that we build a democratic society that's critical and agentic, so that freedom for all does not mean unfreedom for some? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. As a law student myself, and you all delegates will agree with me, how we resonate the importance of digital media and the impacts of social media in this digital world. With this, moving on, it's my privilege to introduce our chief guest, Dr. A. Krupkar, a distinguished IAS officer currently serving as a secretary of the Karnataka government in the Department of Electronics, Information Technology, Biotechnology, Science and Technology since August 2023. Dr. Kaur holds a PhD from Punjab University and a master's in public administration from Singapore. She has played a pivotal role in shaping politics across multiple domains, including finance, urban governance, infrastructure, and technology. Notably, ma'am was the first woman MD for BMTC and Karnataka's Budget and Resource Secretary. Dr. Kaur is instrumental in Karnataka's tech sector, driving initiatives like GCC and biotechnology policies for the year 2024 to 2029. She has held a key positions across in the field of finance, urban development, consistently demonstrating impactful leadership. With such a pride, we are indeed privileged to have a chief guest. With that, I invite Dr. Kaur to please share us your insights with the gathering. Please, ma'am.
A very good morning to everyone. Distinguished guests, esteemed Vice Chancellor, respected professors, faculty members, students, and all the participants of this conference. It's actually an immense pleasure and honor for me to be here with you at this very, very important, two-day international conference. And I'm really intrigued and impressed by the way the theme of the conference has been put together, gender, power, and technology, addressing violence and intersectionality in digital age. And the way Sudeshna has, weaved together so many departments, making it a truly multidisciplinary, initiative, it's really, really impressive. And it's my privilege that I am here this morning with all of you. So as we gather here amidst the backdrop of rapid technological advancement, especially artificial intelligence, machine learning, and autonomous digital agents, we must acknowledge that these innovations are transforming every facet of our lives, from communication and commerce to education, healthcare, and governance. However, such transformation comes with profound responsibility. In fact, we just heard Madam Anita, and the way she explained, the kind of research they have gone into and studied the way internet is today influencing lives, and how the biases which were always prevalent have become more pronounced in this digital age. I really like the way you presented it. And I think the technologies, if unchecked, can inadvertently perpetuate biases, particularly against women and marginalized communities. Historically, technology has been both a leveler and a mirror of prevailing societal inequalities. From the times of Gutenberg printing press, which actually democratized access to knowledge, yet in the beginning it remained very, very elitist. To today's algorithmic and digital agents, technology continues to reflect the value and data on which it is built. Sophisticated AI systems, if not thoughtfully designed, risk magnifying the social hierarchies rather than dismantling them. And I think this is a very big threat. To make it more tangible, consider the challenges that emerge when these technologies are trained on historical or skewed data. For instance, algorithms designed to screen resumes to predict job suitability have sometimes amplified existing gender stereotypes, unfairly disadvantaging qualified women candidates. These unintended outcomes stem from AI systems, learning patterns from historical data. Mitigating such risk require more than just technical interventions. It calls for a multidisciplinary approach, embedding transparency in algorithmic training, ensuring data set diversity, and involving ethicists, social scientists, and civil society in regular audits and decision-making. To underscore the seriousness of this issue, I would like to share two examples. One, I think all of you are aware that in 2018, Amazon developed an AI-based recruitment tool to streamline hiring by evaluating and ranking applicants. However, the system developed a clear bias against female candidates. Resumes that included the word woman, such as Women's Chess Club, were systematically downgraded. And this happened because the tool was trained on tens of years of resumes submitted to the company, which were overwhelmingly male applicants, thus reinforcing existing gender disparities in tech industry. Recognizing these embedded biases, Amazon actually had to pull back this tool. Another example, much more subtle but very revealing, was a study titled Smiling Women Pitching Down. This analyzed DALI AI, an AI-based image generation system. The study found that women were significantly underrepresented in AI-generated depictions of male-dominated occupations and overrepresented in traditionally female-dominated roles. Furthermore, women were frequently shown with smiles and downward head tilts, gestures historically associated with compliance and traditional femininity. Such representations not only reflect, but they subtly reinforce the outdated gender norms. These examples serve as cautionary tales. They remind us that as we embrace technological tools to improve our lives and solve problems, we must be vigilant against reproducing the very inequalities we want to overcome. Biases trained into agentic frameworks, if left unchecked, will scale inequity, not justice. It is therefore incumbent upon developers, governments, and civil society to ensure that equity, fairness, and accountability are built into the very architecture of our digital futures. So many governments have been very mindful of this, and in fact, European Union was one of the first to come up with a framework which proposed a comprehensive legal framework for artificial intelligence, the EU AI Act. Of course, there were all kinds of reactions when the act came, and it was touted as, it will completely kill innovation. But at the heart lies a very simple idea with profound implications that not all AI created is equal. A language app helping tourists is one thing, but an algorithm deciding who gets bail, who gets a job interview call, this is an entirely different thing. So EU drew the line. It classified AI systems based on risk from minimal to unacceptable. The Act zeroes in on high-risk AI systems, those used in critical sectors like education, employment, law enforcement, border control, and healthcare. These are systems that can directly impact the people and the society, and therefore they need to be checked. And for these, the Act demands rigor, transparency, and human oversight. Artificial intelligence, while it's very, very powerful, but there has to be human oversight over artificial intelligence. These developments, reflect the deepening jurisprudential awareness that digital infrastructures and automated decision-making systems must be anchored in, while regulatory frameworks are still evolving. In India, there is a clear emphasis on striking a balance between fostering innovation and ensuring ethical accountability. Closer home, the issues are slightly different. We must reckon with increasing pervasive challenge of technology-facilitated gender-based violence. And I think you really elaborated very well in your talk. While digital tools have expanded opportunities for communication and activism, they have simultaneously opened avenues for abuse. In India, post-pandemic data reveals alarming trends. 67% of women report facing misinformation and defamation. And I think, again, Anita mentioned about it. 66% experience cyber harassment, over 50% receive violent threats. These attacks transcend the digital realm, spilling into physical spaces, workplaces, and homes, creating a continuum of trauma that can have devastating effects. Women in public life in particular, women who are journalists, politicians, professionals, they face disproportionate targeting. UNESCO notes that 73% of the women journalists globally have experienced online violence. Many are forced to withdraw from digital spaces entirely, limiting their participation in public discourse, professional advancement, and economic opportunity. The deepfake technology has only compounded this threat. Even globally, recognized figures like Taylor Swift, Emma Watson, Scarlett, they have all found themselves being represented non-consensually in synthetic and intimate visual fabrications, reminding us that the visibility can amplify vulnerability in digital age. A lot of what I'm saying is actually what Anita also mentioned, but that is the fact. Today we are in a world where, this balance between visibility and vulnerability, this is a very, very thin line. And I think the more we understand this, the better we are equipped to handle it. Supreme Court, in one of its landmark judgments in Justice K.S. Puttaswamy case, it recognized the fundamental right to privacy as intrinsic to dignity, autonomy, and individual freedom. Though not directly about algorithmic systems, the judgment established key principles: legality, necessity, proportionality, and accountability that are highly relevant in emerging debates on digital governance. From a gender perspective, it affirms that digital infrastructures must protect against intrusive profiling and discriminating surveillance, especially for women and vulnerable communities who often face disproportionate risk in opaque digital systems. It sets a foundational expectation that design and use of technology must be constitutional in spirit. It should be fair, inclusive, and right-affirming. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, recently they have released some principles for responsible AI. As I mentioned, we are treading very carefully. While as a nation, we have not taken a decision to really strongly regulate, but baby steps are being taken towards, ensuring that the system continues to be responsible. The MeitY guidelines, they emphasize on inclusiveness, fairness, and transparency. Additionally, the India's Digital India Act aims to address algorithmic accountability, platform governance, and user rights development that shows growing alignment with the global trends. In fact, the theme of this conference finds alignment with the emerging global legal consciousness, where gender, power, and technology are no longer treated as siloed issues, but interconnected pillars of justice, governance, and human dignity. Unless we see these things together as a continuum, it is difficult to find any solutions in that siloized approach. As digital innovation accelerates in tandem with shifting geopolitics, our dialogue around inclusive and ethical technology becomes more than just a matter of social justice. It becomes one of global strategic importance. Globally, we observe profound shifts in geopolitical dynamics as nations realign strategic interests, reevaluate alliances, and navigate technological competition. The emergence of digital technologies has not only democratized information access, but also introduced new dimensions of power dynamics. Historically, technology has acted both as a leveler and as a strategic edge in times of conflict and global contestation. The role of technology in geopolitics is paradoxical. It can concentrate power, but also distribute it. Ensuring digital advancement serves equity rather than exacerbates disparity requires proactive governance and international cooperation, especially in relations to gender-sensitive design and implementation. The intersection of gender, technology, and geopolitical strategy is becoming increasingly evident. Countries that have prioritized inclusive technology policies witness substantial benefits in innovation, economic prosperity, and socio-political stability. Conversely, regions failing to address gender disparities in digital engagement risk exacerbating existing inequalities and limiting their growth and global influence. In a broader historical and geostrategic context, I would like to talk about three critical pathways that promise genuine empowerment and sustainable transformation for women through the digital technology. The first critical pathway is digital literacy and empowerment. This is rooted in historical understanding that literacy and education have always been primary tools of empowerment and societal transformation. Digital literacy today involves not merely operational familiarity with technology, but also critical awareness of digital rights, cyber safety, and ethical digital citizenship. Nations and companies investing proactively in digital literacy for women gain significant competitive advantage in innovation, economic diversity, and global economic resilience. Moreover, comprehensive digital literacy programs help build resilience against misinformation and cyber violence, fostering informed and engaged global citizens capable of driving meaningful change. Some illustrative examples from what the governments, both at the central and the state level, are doing. An illustrative example is Karnataka's ShaktiNet initiative, which integrates digital literacy training into women's self-help groups in rural districts. By offering hands-on sessions on cyber hygiene, safe use of social media, and online financial tools, the program empowers women not only to access digital services, but also to use them confidently and safely. The state government has also tied up with various multinational companies, including Meta, Cisco, to create an environment of cyber safety. In fact, with Meta, the Digital Nagrik program aims to deliver awareness program to 10 lakh students across Karnataka. And these are students from high school, pre-university, as well as undergrads. Similarly, the Cisco program, which trains women on cyber security and also gives a certain intermediate level of proficiency in cybersecurity, it comes with a mandate that at least 50% of the people who are trained would be women. Another very promising initiative, and I think it's been implemented very well in Karnataka, is the recently launched Drone Didi program under India's Namo Drone Didi Yojana. This program is aimed at training 15,000 women operating agricultural drones for crop monitoring, pesticide spraying, and mapping services. These are domains which were typically and historically associated only with men. Beyond offering skill development, Drone Didi challenges the gender norms in rural economies by positioning women at the forefront of agri-tech innovation. By integrating them in precision farming and digital agriculture, this initiative is not only expanding livelihood opportunities, but also reframing the narrative around women's roles in emerging technological ecosystems. Such examples underscore how thoughtfully crafted programs can intersect gender empowerment with frontier technologies. The second critical pathway is inclusive digital infrastructure. Again, infrastructure has been central to empowerment and economic integration of marginalized populations. Digital infrastructure is no different. It must be intentionally inclusive, robust, and equitable. It involves incorporating women's perspective into design, governance, and implementation of digital platforms, thus reducing systemic barriers and risks of digital exclusion and violence. Countries and regions which have prioritized this, they have done much better. For example, according to a WEF Global Gender Gap Report 2023, countries like Iceland, Finland, Norway, which consistently rank high on digital inclusion indices, also demonstrate some of the world's highest level of female labor force participation and innovation output. We have always known, these countries for their very, very inclusive policies and their innovation ecosystem. And they have done well because they have given equal opportunity to both the genders at all levels, right from the stage of design to implementation to taking it forward. In India, there was a study, which was done in 2022, which showed that mobile internet usage among women increased by 20% in regions with targeted digital infrastructure programs, contributing directly to increased financial inclusion and access to government services. These statistics underscore the vital link between digital inclusivity and broader developmental outcomes. The third critical pathway, I've mentioned about two, the third critical pathway is intersectional policy framework. Intersectionality as a concept was articulated by renowned scholar Kimberlé Crenshaw. It recognizes the complexity of social identities and interconnectedness of various forms of discrimination. Policies acknowledging the intersectionality understand that women's experiences of digital violence and empowerment are vastly different, shaped by multiple factors such as ethnicity, socioeconomic status, geography, and disability. Acknowledging this intersectionality leads to more targeted, effective, and just policies, fostering truly inclusive digital empowerment that transcends mere equality to achieve genuine equity. A compelling example of this is the Digital Beti initiative, launched in partnership with METI, which tailors digital training modules for young women based on their socioeconomic backgrounds and regional needs. By integrating language preferences, accessibility considerations, and community-led feedback loops, the program ensures that training remains contextually relevant and equitable. Such initiatives exemplify how intersectional frameworks can inform policy design to directly address the nuanced challenges faced by diverse groups of women in the digital landscape. In Karnataka, we understand the significance of these pathways. Our strategic initiatives aim to foster robust digital literacy through educational partnership programs, such as the Digital Saksharta Abhiyan, which targets non-IT literate citizens. We being the IT capital of the world, we really need to ensure that not just people who are in Bangalore, who are privileged, but also people across Karnataka, coming from the remotest parts of Karnataka, they are IT literate. And I think the state is doing a lot of work around this. So especially women in rural India are the focus of this Disha program that I just spoke about. Through state-level efforts like Karnataka Digital Empowerment Mission, we promote digital skilling among women entrepreneurs and students across districts. Udyog Mitra, which integrates digital career counseling with skill mapping for women entering job markets, and Karnataka Knowledge Commission for Women in Tech outreach, which encourages girls to enter STEM disciplines through digital boot camps and mentorship. All these programs complement and localize national efforts at providing digital literacy to the 6 crore rural households of India. And Karnataka's own Mahila Shakti Kendra scheme, which integrates technology-based learning modules for adolescent girls and women through community engagement. These are all very, very powerful engagements and have made a lot of impact in rural India, in rural Karnataka in particular. These programs collectively aim to bridge the gender digital divide and empower women through meaningful access to knowledge, services, economic opportunities, and build inclusive digital infrastructures in collaboration with industry. As this conference proceeds, I urge each one of you, academicians, policymakers, industry leaders, and students in particular, to engage deeply and collaboratively. As thinkers, leaders, and change makers, each one of you has a role in translating these ideas into action, whether through your classroom discourse, grassroots programs, legal frameworks, or technological design. Your collective insights, research findings, and innovative recommendations will be instrumental in shaping the future policies and practices aimed at gender equity and technological inclusivity. As I said, when we invest in women and girls, we are investing in people who invest in everyone else. Women and girls act as multipliers of progress. Their empowerment leads to exponential growth for their families and communities. Let us then together envisage and work towards a world where technology is not just a platform for innovation, but a bridge to equity, where every digital leap brings us closer to justice, and where every woman, regardless of identity or geography, can lead, shape, and thrive in our shared digital future. In championing this vision, we are not asserting a zero-sum agenda, nor infringing upon the rights or aspirations of any other group. Rather, we are choosing a more sustainable and forward-looking path, one that recognizes inclusion as a multiplier of shared strength, not a diminisher of individual stake. Empowerment in this context does not arise from redistribution of scarcity. It stems from the creation of abundance of opportunity, access, and dignity. It fosters collective resilience and widens the circle of trust, legitimacy, and innovation. True progress lies in designing systems that reflect complexity and plurality of the society, where the empowerment of one group strengthens the fabric of the whole, and where every stakeholder, irrespective of identity, finds representation, resilience, and a meaningful voice. I hope this conference will work towards this goal, and together we will build a much more resilient and a much more inclusive society. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise, ma'am, especially giving us the real world facts and also showing us the balance between visibility and vulnerability. And all of us will agree that not only your words, but you are itself an epitome for the women empowerment. To introduce our very own Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Shetty sir, who brings extensive experience in dental education and administration with BDS, MDS, and international certification. Sir served as a Dean and Principal of Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Science for 11 years. His involvement in governing bodies showcase his administrative depth. Dr. Shetty aims to foster a research-driven academic environment. His mission is to ignite learning and research capabilities in students, emphasizing top-class research-based education. Sir's diverse experience across teaching, research, and administration positions him a strong academic leader for all of us. With that, I extend a warm welcome and invite our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Jayashankar Shetty sir, for the presidential address.
Thank you. Respected dignitaries on the dais, chief guest for today's function, Dr. Ekrup Kaur, Secretary to Government, Department of Electronics, Information Technology, Biotechnology, and Science and Technology, and esteemed keynote speaker, Anita Gurumurthy, Dr. Lakshmi Devi Y, Professor Dasharath, Principal, University Law College, Organizing Secretary, Dr. Sudashna Mukherjee, and all the Professor Indira Madam, all the faculty members from Women's Studies and University Law College, and the faculties from Bangalore University, all other esteemed delegates and research scholars, and my dear students. And this program is organized by UGC Center for Women Studies, Bangalore University, in collaboration with University Law College, Bangalore University, and Karnataka State Akkamadevi Women University, Vijaypur. And because all the three institutes are important stakeholders in gender equality, empowerment, whatever Madam has spoken, and even before independence also, after independence also, and a lot of legislative reforms, acts has been amended in the parliament. And because of all those initiatives, and we could see the lot of gender equality and improvements. And still, already Anita Madam and Kaur Madam, they have already spoken. And still, there is a lot of the gap. And recently, I read in the newspaper to get an absolute gender equality, we require another 130 years. And it's very, very sad to know, because still we have not achieved that gender equality. And today's the topic for our international conference, today's conference, gender, power, technology, addressing violence and intersectionality in digital age. And gender equality, as you all know, is one of the most important and sustainable developmental goal, and fifth sustainable developmental goal. And still, either developed countries or developed countries, still we have not achieved. And recently, I read in the newspaper, still women's representation in legislation is around 8.5%. And especially in Panchayat Raj, it has increased around 42 to 43%. And there is even the birth ratio also, there is a disparity. And each state and each district, there is a variation. Each country, there is a variation. Everywhere, there is what we call gender equality is very much visible. And all of us, all the teaching institutions, and we have to focus more on how to improve this. And it is with the immense honor and privilege that I stand before you today to inaugurate this multidisciplinary international conference on gender, power, and technology, addressing violence, intersectionality in digital age. This conference, funded under PM Usha scheme, mark a crucial milestone in our collective journey towards understanding and addressing the evolving landscape of gendered violence and digital inequalities. At the outset, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Vijaypur Akkamahadevi Women's University and Bangalore University Law College and the Center for Women's Studies, Bangalore University, for their invaluable collaboration in organizing this momentous event. Their unwavering commitment to gender studies and social justice has been instrumental in bringing together this dynamic intellectual community. The technology has revolutionized our world, offering unprecedented opportunities for communication, empowerment, knowledge sharing. However, it has also magnified existing power structure, deepened inequality, and facilitated new forms of violence, from online harassment and digital surveillance to algorithmic biases and cyber exploitation. The digital age presents both challenges and possibilities in our struggle for gender equity. Through this conference, we seek to engage in a meaningful dialogue, critical reflections, and collaborative solution to address digital gender-based violence, systemic inequalities by fostering interdisciplinary conversation among scholars, activists, legal experts, and policymakers. We aim to bring gaps in research, policy, and practices. I am confident that the deliberation over the next 2 days will generate insightful discussion, innovative strategies, and actionable recommendations. Let us commit ourselves to building a future where digital spaces are inclusive, safe, and equitable for all. Since I came from health background, there is a lot of health issue, especially cervical cancer, breast cancer is very rampant in our country. I was in the governing council of ICMR. There also I have stressed Union Health Minister JP Naddaji, because now presently the vaccinations are available, and we should give vaccination to all our women and girls of this country. This is going to be help a lot. And once again, I extend my deepest appreciation to the organizing institution, the esteemed panelists, and all the participants who have gathered here with a shared vision of justice and change. Let us embark on this intellectual journey with open minds, critical perspectives, and a collective commitment to advancing gender equality in the digital age. I look forward to some meaningful quality publication out of this conference. With these words, I wish you all engaging and fruitful deliberations and discussion. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you so much, sir. Amidst prolonging commitments, our Vice Chancellor always presides us in giving his enlightening words and always gracing us in the events. As a Vice Chancellor, sir has always been supportive in organizing these August gatherings. We're really grateful for your words, sir, and we also thank the guests who is living in the time constraints. Thank you, ma'am. Now, as we conclude the inaugural session, our deepest gratitude to each one of you. To share the vote of thanks, I kindly request Professor Lakshmi Devi, Director of Women's Studies, Karnataka State, Akka Mahadevi Women's University, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Good morning to all. I am pleased to be standing here on behalf of all organizers to convey my gratitude. President of this inaugural function, Professor Jayakar Shetty, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Bangalore University, Bangalore, deserves special thanks for being here with us on this occasion. Thank you, sir. I thank to the keynote speaker, Anita Gurumurthy, founding member and executive director, IT for Change. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed chief guest of this function, Professor Ekrup, our Secretary to Government of Karnataka. Thank you, madam. Sincere thanks to guest of the today's function, Professor Shanta Devi, Vice Chancellor, Akka Mahadevi Women's University, Vijayapura. Madam deserves special recognition for accepting our invitation and being with us, but she is not here. She has some work. So our absence, thanks to her. I would like to thank guest of this inaugural program, Professor Pandit, Coordinator, PM Usha, Bangalore University, Bangalore. I express heartfelt gratitude to Organizing Secretary, Dr. Sudeshna Mukherjee, Coordinator, Center for Women's Studies, Bangalore University, Bangalore. Thank you very much, madam. I would like to thank Professor N. Dashrath, Principal, University Law College, Bangalore University, Bangalore. Thank you very much, sir. I express my thanks to Professor Satish Gowda, Professor University Law College, Bangalore University, Bangalore. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to convener of this conference, Professor C.D. Venkatesh and Dr. M. Siddhappa sir. Thank you both of you, sir. I express heartfelt gratitude to our dedicated staff of the University Center Bangalore and Vijayapur Women's Study Center. I would like to thank Professor R. Indra Madam being with us, Madam. Thank you very much. I would like to thank all syndicate members, academic council members, faculties, speakers, research scholars, and non-teaching staffs. Thank you so much to all media persons, participants, paper presenters, and my dear students. Last but not least, a heartfelt thanks to each of you for making this inaugural function so special for all of us on behalf of Bangalore University, Akmadevi Women's University, and University Law College, Bangalore. Thank you, one and all.
We also thank you for presiding with us, ma'am. With this luminous start, we now officially declare the event open and proceed further with a short break. Thank you one and all. Have a great day ahead.
honored to have Professor R. Indra ma'am as our chairperson. Ma'am is distinguished sociologist and professor of eminence at MS Ramaya University and visiting professor at University of Mysore. With a PhD in sociology, she has held prominent position across Indian and international institutions. A 2-time Fulbright and 4-time Shatri Fellow, ma'am has also been visiting professor at university worldwide, including USA and South Africa. Ma'am research focuses on women's empowerment and marginalized communities, notably in Karnataka, Joyda region. Ma'am authored numerous publications and lectured widely, recipient of an Indian Sociological Society Lifetime Achievement Award and Literal Award. Ma'am is a leading figure in Indian sociology. We warmly welcome you, ma'am. It is an honor to have you lead this session. Now it is my privilege to introduce our first distinguished speaker, Professor Mary John ma'am, a leading scholar in Indian women's and gender studies, formerly directed the Center for Women Development Studies. Her research addressed critical issues like adverse child sex ratio and early marriages alongside broad feminist theory. With over 30 publications, she analyzed the Me Too movement, Indian political history, and feminist vocabularies. Ma'am featured in reputed journals informed policy, notably on sexual harassment in educational settings. Ma'am is a pivotal figure and bridging academic rigor with impactful policy contribution. We warmly welcome you, ma'am. It is our pleasure to have you with us here. Ma'am will...
Hello.
Ma'am will share her insights on women's movement and
Have you come back?
women's movement and digital
Hello.
politics.
Yeah.
We look forward to her valuable insights. Over to you, ma'am.
Namaskara, good morning to all of you, and it's always a pleasure for me to be at the Center for Women's Studies, Bangalore University. For me, it's like my home. I've been coming here ever since the center started. Thank you, Sudeshna, and my friends and colleagues with Dr. Venkatesh and Dr. Siddhappa and all my friends at the center for having me here. And thank you for this opportunity to be part of this session. It's my pleasure, sharing stage space with Professor Mary John. If there is one, I have always been wanting to translate your work, Women's Studies in India, into Kannada. I hope I can do it during my lifetime because it's such a, classic. I'm always hoping I could do that. And as I said, I will not come before her and you. All I would say is we've been talking a lot about technology, cyberspace, and what we heard in the morning has placed before us the two dimensions from which we have to look at technological interventions in the movement for gender equality. I'm not one of those who will say everything about the cyberspace is bad or everything about the cyberspace is good. So let's listen to Professor Mary John. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Indira, and special thanks to Sudeshna. Bangalore is my hometown. I grew up here, I went to college here, and then left. I have now come back as a retired person. And I have to say it's a special honor since I'm an old alumni of Bangalore University. I did my undergraduate at Mount Carmel College. It's a special honor to be here. It's my very first visit to Bangalore University. I've always passed through it in the beautiful environs, but thanks to you, I actually get to be here. Thanks also to the Law College for organizing this very important event. Actually, I don't have very much to say. I feel I'm an imposter. This is not my area of research. So it's as someone who has been part of women's studies, the women's movement, that I want to put out just a few thoughts, very preliminary. So bear with me, and I hope I'll not take too much time. I think the other two speakers are online, if I'm not mistaken. So this presentation is an effort to reflect on the women's movement's engagement with the digital world in relation to violence in contemporary India. Surprisingly, even though India's entry into the digital age has been much remarked upon and is a growing field of study, and we heard from Anita Gurumurthy this morning the incredible kinds of studies that are being done on this area. So there are many manifold studies, and even though that is true, and even though in the women's movement our research areas are expanding all the time, there is actually not enough. I feel there is a lack of an interface between the women's movement and engagements with the digital world. So I will begin by looking at some of the instances where the digital sphere has been linked to women and to feminist concerns. And I will then conclude by listing what I feel are some of the issues that need further attention. So once again, I will be making my suggestions as a scholar in the field of women's studies, but with no special, I really want to emphasize this, no special knowledge of the technologies and practices of digitality. Okay, so let me start this presentation with a short account of an interesting campaign in 2009. I don't know if very young people in this room would remember, that might be of special interest to an audience here, as it was based in the city of Bengaluru and concerned abusive behavior by a right-wing organization in Mangaluru. A few weeks before Valentine's Day in 2009, in the coastal town of Mangaluru, a newly formed right-wing Hindu group called the Sri Ramasena announced that its members would target young couples found together on that day. Our activists will go around with a priest, a turmeric stub, and a Mangala Sutra on February 14th. If we come across couples being together in public and expressing their love, we will take them to the nearest temple and conduct their marriage. Their leader, Pramod Mutalik, was quoted as saying. But what happened was rather different. Ramasena men attacked a Mangalore pub, beating up the women they found there and forcing them out of the premises. The incident was widely covered in the media and evoked strong reactions. Within a few days of the pub attack, friends of mine on Facebook reported the formation of a group calling itself the Consortium of Pub-Going Loose and Forward Women, but led by a young journalist, Nisha Susan. According to G. Arunima, another women's studies scholar, who was invited by a friend to join what was called the Pink Chuddy campaign. I don't know how many of you remember the Pink Chuddy campaign. Good, I'm seeing a few hands go up. PCC for short, of over 30,000 Facebookers. They decided that the appropriate form of protest in such a context was to send pink panties to Pramod Mutalik as a sign of their reciprocation his violence with their affection. And also to go to pubs all over the country on Valentine's Day to celebrate love by drinking in public. Khaki shorts to be countered by thousands of pink chuddies. In her account and analysis of the campaign, Tejaswini Niranjana discusses the diverse online and offline support for the women's movement's first internet campaign in India, replete with collection centers and courier points. Culture, our culture versus American culture, figured frequently. While there were many who opposed the campaign, the more progressive ones claiming class polarization over the issue, Niranjana notes the wide range of organizations that offered public support, including Kannada linguistic nationalists, the farmers' movement, Marxist parties, local groups in Bangalore city, who took it upon themselves to support heterosexual lovers' rights to freedom of expression on Valentine's Day by patrolling the streets. So there were all these, people, civil society on the streets to help people express their affection. Noting the widespread support across classes, regions, and gender, another commentator, Sumi Krishna, however, wondered, Karnataka has earlier seen unspeakable atrocities against Dalit women, horrendous as acid attacks, and other kinds of violence against women of all communities. But never before have the media and the middle class empathized with such spontaneity and vehemence. Others have been more openly critical of its elitism, some even seeing in the pink chaddi an invitation to sexual violation. Why not just do it with flowers? Asked Manisha Behel. In her widely circulated and thought-provoking response, Arunima found herself comparing PCC with the Manipuri women's counter-protest against the Indian Army's rape and violent murder of Manorama Devi. These women had stripped themselves naked and turned to face the gates of the army headquarters, calling out, "Rape us." Analogously, why not see the pink chaddi as a frontal response to the Ram Sena's violent disciplining of women in public? Clearly, a spontaneous and light-hearted pink chaddi campaign, for all its secular credentials and capacity to harness a popular new medium, has not spearheaded a struggle for women's rights in the current era of globalization. In a conference like this one, focusing on digital violence, note, however, that this is the form that our first online campaign took. Doubtless, there was discomfort with the very emblem of the campaign, the pink panty, at once coy and aggressive, located outside the institution of marriage, yet squarely within the circuits of feminine consumption. I find it more significant that the first example I could find of a public campaign involving the digital medium in our context should be this one, countering the violence of the streets with a light-hearted online strategy. Interestingly, feminists in the last 2 decades have become a presence to contend with on online platforms. This was visible in the aftermath of the quote-unquote Nirbhaya gang rape in terms of the presence of speeches by feminist leaders that went viral and made possible the widespread coverage nationally and internationally of this particular case. So, this morning Anita told us very, very, grimly about what virality can mean. But virality can also mean someone like Kavita Krishnan going online, becoming some kind of a feminist leader and star. Major campaigns around violence, the Losha campaign, I don't know, this was the online list of sexual harassers amongst academicians. This was in 2015. This was an online campaign on Facebook, as well as of course, the hashtag #MeToo campaign in 2017 used Facebook and Twitter to make experiences of sexual harassment sayable in a way that had not happened before. The anonymous list of sexual harassers put up online in 2015 had been created going by those who supported it because it was so very difficult to complain openly against powerful faculty members when students underwent experiences of sexual harassment and violation. As we know too well, this list became highly controversial precisely because it was anonymous and did not go through the mechanisms of lodging complaints through sexual harassment committees. I will not go into further detail here for lack of time. This hashtag #MeToo campaign that drew open inspiration from similar campaigns in other parts of the world was different in this respect. Victims of sexual harassment and violence gave direct testimony of their earlier experiences of violation, in this case using the digital medium of Twitter. Journalists from the media industry were particularly vocal, as were some artists from the film and comedy industries. Once again, some voices raised doubts about its elitism, even though several testimonies were highly reflexive about their relative privilege as victims who, thanks to their age, they were now much older and senior, and also reflexive about their social location, that they could have the confidence to speak out. In other words, younger people would have a much harder time. Those from much more vulnerable social locations even harder. In a few instances, this had the positive effect of forcing some accountability from those who had been openly accused. Does this mean that the women's movement has only benign and positive experiences of the digital world? Hardly. Most recently, Bengaluru was witness to a horrific case of widespread sexual abuse by a major politician. I know you all know whom I'm talking about. The Janata Dal secular MP Prajwal Revana. This was, however, a case that took everyone aback and left feminists with enormous challenges. Not only had Revana been accused of numerous instances of sexual abuse of large numbers of women who had remained silent, but it took an even more ugly aspect when videos of his acts of abuse were made available publicly online. This is a case that, even though he was ultimately arrested, has sorely tested our abilities to counter such forms of abuse and the numbing aftermath of shame that it left in its wake. There were many accounts of women who said they didn't even know how to step out of the house, they didn't know how to face their family members when their pictures appeared online. It brought to the fore the extraordinary quality of a feudal mode of political power in combination with the equally potent nature of a digital social medium. Many of the victims were not voiceless, but active party workers, and Karnataka is, after all, home to several very well-known women's groups and progressive organizations who have decades of experience in combating violence. And yet, even after so many years of naming and combating sexual violence, supporting victims through all the hazards of police cases and the courts, the Revanat violence brought us all to something of a standstill. And I want us to think about that. Why now, after all these years, were we so completely on the back foot? This brings me to my own reflections on the questions before us when we think of digital violence. Most of what I have to say involves problems we have to avoid, and I think maybe I'm repeating what has been said in the morning, so please bear with me. Firstly, we should not think of the digital medium as merely an instrument to be used and discarded at will. Familiar as we are with all the myriad forms of violence and sexual harassment against women that preceded the invention of computers, mobile phones, and the internet, we might be tempted to simply think of digital violence as the addition of a new technology being deployed by perpetrators who were equally guilty of, in the past, of older forms of violence. Stalking online, sharing videos and images on digital platforms, and so on, are no doubt quite rampant. And as I'm sure many of the presentations in the coming few days will pick up on and give us more information about. However, I do not believe that the digital medium is simply another technology to be picked up or discarded at will. It is indeed a medium, one that someone like myself only became partially familiar with when I was an older person. And I think age matters a lot here. Those of you who have grown up with this medium, as distinct for someone like me at this stage in my life becoming familiar with it. And I have to confess, in a meeting like this one, I have yet to join Facebook or X or Instagram, and my students, I cannot tell you, they are shocked when they hear that I'm not on these media. They are shocked when they hear I left my phone at home, and I say I left my phone at home. They are completely shocked because for them, phone is life. So I am not a good example, therefore, of what we are up against today. So this is to say that digitality is now part of everyday lives, I feel, completely interpolated by it, even for those who are out of it or excluded from it. Another temptation to be avoided, the idea that such technologies should or could be banned because of all the harm that they are capable of. And this is a very common reaction to say ban it. Here I would like to point out that the biggest temptation is to treat women like children, and very often that's precisely how we're treated, which effectively means that women's best form of protection from harm is to prevent access. I came across a notice on the Women's Studies WhatsApp group a few days ago, I don't know if you saw it, Sudeshna, announcing that a particular country has decided to ban digital technologies from primary school classrooms and return to the use of books, pencil, paper only. Now, I'm not an expert in pedagogy and so cannot comment on this. Let us grant that they have a point in wanting children to learn to express themselves without the digital medium to start off with. But what may be a good pedagogical perspective for the very young child should not be transposed to young adults and least of all to older girls and women. But that's what keeps happening. Where very often women and children is a constant phrase that is used as though we were a single homogeneous group to be protected in much the same way. It is vital to gain some historical perspective on the question of women's fraught relation to new inventions and technologies. In the 19th century, the new technology for girls was learning how to read and write in school, for the few who had access to this during the period of social reform. We should be reminded today that this was considered extremely dangerous by the status quo and vehemently opposed in the initial years. It was firmly believed that a girl who could read and write would use such a skill for sexually nefarious ends, such as writing to a secret lover. After all, why should she have any need for such knowledge when her husband and his family would take of all her needs? Over and over again, if we look at history, new technologies were widely viewed as sexually dangerous for girls and women in particular, a source of corruption and invitation to violation. So in the case that I'm referring to, the 19th century, now very boring topic of sending girls to school, it was only by the end of the 19th century that attitudes towards women's education in some quarters changed, when education was molded into creating a new woman as the symbol of the new nation to be, one who would never forget her primary duties as wife and mother. Then education was okay. Recall when the mobile phone first arrived and how strongly families opposed the idea that girls could use one, much less own one. We are too quick to condemn the use of new inventions. Think of selfie culture. Okay. Think of selfie culture and the way we dismiss it as simply frivolous, pandering to capitalist consumption, selfish, or just simply dangerous. We are very quick. I'm saying our knee-jerk reaction is to condemn. Instead, let me conclude by saying that firstly, as scholars and activists both, we must take time out to know these mediums better, and I'm completely guilty here. Let us by all means not allow them to overwhelm us. But that danger exists for anything and is not confined to technologies such as the internet. Let us also recognize that the greatest danger is not, and I realize this is not something I know enough about to be making such claims, but I think the greatest danger is not acts of violence by men against women using these new media, but rather that this new media is at once a source of so much positivity, but also the greatest mechanism today for surveillance and control. The extent of that surveillance and control is something we cannot even imagine. Yes, the source of such control for many women may well be other family members or from a friend or loved one who betrays one's love and affection. But the biggest control we cannot afford to forget and which affects us all, even those who may not own a digital device, is systemic. It is about big data as well as little data, without which the world as we know it would not exist. How to negotiate such power, how to hold it accountable, so that women might indeed have more freedom than they do today. That is a subject, I think, of the deliberations here, and I once again congratulate the organizer of the conference to make this happen for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your insightful words. Now joining us virtually, we have Professor Anju Sharan Upadhyaya ma'am. Ma'am is a distinguished political scientist with over 40 years at Banaras Hindu University, including roles as Dean and Chair, currently at MIT World Peace University and Peace Research Institution, Oslo. She has extensive international experience, including positions at the London School of Economics and UN universities. Her research spans self-determination, election reforms, ethnic conflicts, women and peace, food security, and digital policies. She is published with leading presses and co-edited Women Empowerment in India, A leading expert in peace studies and political science, her work bridges academic rigor with global policy implications. We warmly welcome you, Ma. Ma will share her insights on empowerment and advocacy through technology, feminist resistance in the digital sphere. We look forward for Ma'am's valuable perspective. Thank you.
तो अनम्यूट उससे हो जाएगा। हाँ तो ये अनम्यूटेड तो है ही है। उससे तो
Ma'am, you're audible now.
Okay.
You just need to turn on your video.
I think that there are more than one device.
You're good now.
Good, great. I think there are more than one devices that are operational there. Give me my phone, please. Thank you. Yeah, sorry about this. And first of all, my apologies. I wasn't able to join. There were certain glitches, and so and certain very urgent things that I just couldn't join. My gratitude to Sudeshna, to Bangalore University, and to all the organizers for giving me this time. The reason I was very keen to share a platform with people like people who are experts in this area is that following women's empowerment through now decades, ever since the Center for Women's Studies was set up at Banaras Hindu University way back in the late 80s, one has been following these movements, and as a scholar of political science and non-violence and peace, one has also wondered to what extent women have been going to make their voices felt. And then came this big revolution, which was the digital technology, followed by what we say, is the AI and the rest of it all. And then we saw how, women started making use of this tool for non-violent protest experiences. The study that I am focusing on to present right now is on the campus. You might think that I've been very lazy to not go beyond the campus, but basically it's an attempt to see how the cyber physical social space, which I have also mentioned in my abstract, at times works as an empowering tool, but at times actually diminishes the capabilities and leads us to this whole system of making a facade of instrumentality of the AI or the digital technology. So activists have long taken recourse to social media and digital technology, which all of us know, to popularize various causes for which they stand. There have been a number of tools, networks, hashtags that have been brought to use that quickly sift the overcrowded space of digital jungle and bring into focus the causes that are dear to the users. And in this process, the digital social media has emerged as a global platform for protests and social movements. And we're all familiar with that, ranging from, of late, Me Too and all those tools that were used regarding violence against women campaigns. And their popularity across the world has been very, very compelling. But the cyber physical social systems framework is being used in this study to decipher the advantages and the limitations that the cyber tools in the field of feminist resistance are becoming increasingly popular. And in the past, as I just said, that I have followed the women's protest movements ranging from the Nirbhaya to the Occupy Balwatar in Nepal, and then once again to the protest movements on the campus. We have seen how these causes were mobilized by digital tools like Avaz and ORG for Change, Move On, Youth Ki Avaz, etc., through various social platforms. We're aware about the Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and so on. And cyber activism, one can safely say, has actually benefited movement, because to reach out across to generate the awareness, these tools have come in very, very handy, as my study also revealed. And there has been a lot of mobilization across not only the campus, in the case of 2017 movement, wherein these women connected to even women from your city, that is Bangalore, down to the journalists in Delhi, to Calcutta. And that is something which really attracted our attention, because all one has been following is there's a digital divide and women are not able to reach out to positions where they can, because they are constrained. But of late, we have been seeing that these tools that often also hide identities, and we're all aware how identities need in certain social phenomena to be actually hidden so that women can come up and they could, they could assert what they wanted to. So there has been a very strong movement. I mean, there's a history in India of non-violent protest movements. I need not emphasize that. Ranging and globally as well. I mean, ranging from Arab Spring, but a lot has been studied about Arab Spring. It wasn't all that innocent or all that flawless as we thought initially. It was down to the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019 in India, which too had so many agencies, joining hands on the one hand and maligning on the other hand. But in both the cases, these were, these were tools that were resorted to for empowerment. So social network sites have generally come in support, and that has also been evident through very, very forcefully through the Nirbhaya protest movements. Bangalore itself in 2016 reported a mass molestation on the New Year's Eve, where widespread assault and harassment took place. And this particular internet? No, I've just put myself invisible. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's better now, ma'am.
Okay. So I think I'll go invisible, like, I will mute the video so that you can hear me. And I'll also be quick so that as long as you're hearing me, I'll very quickly share. Because the narrative that I'm going to make is not with a happy ending. So the first episode happened in 2017 when a woman researcher returning back from her site was molested by two or three students. She came back to the hostel, and she was also in a very she was also shamed, so to speak, by the authorities, and these wardens and the administrators repeated the usual thing, that what made you stay away when it was already dark, down to the assertion that when you guys are not taking care of your own security, how do you expect very, very where it was mirrored, where posts were made very evident, and this actually followed a lot of attention, which news media people started giving it. And it just the women students, they started protesting against the attitude of the teachers, against the attitude of the then vice chancellor, who also took this stand that you people are nice girls, and you should not be doing or indulging in things that are bringing about a bad name to your families. And this was then this only made matters worse. The young people got very, very irritated, and it just so happened that when they were protesting, the prime minister's uh, you know entourage was expected to go through the same route that had to be diverted. There was one inauguration that the prime minister was expected to make, and he couldn't do it because the strength of these women protesters was so strong. So they mobilized and institutionalized, and then they were not satisfied by anything less than an apology, as well as the vice chancellor leaving. And this had a very, very positive impact on the movement. And one hears that once the prime minister reached back to Delhi, he sent in a message that the vice chancellor needs to leave immediately on indefinite leave. However, in between, there were many punishments that were slapped on these young protesters, ranging from Section 147 of Rioting, 353 assault of criminal force, to deter public service from discharge of their duties, to even 307 attempt to murder against these young students. And I mean, there are as you would imagine, there's so many sections that were slapped on these people individually, and were asked to explain. So an inquiry into the incident was ordered by the chief minister, and the local administration was admonished for having resorted to lathi charge, which it did, and the vice chancellor was asked to proceed on leave. Awareness about women's rights and justice was then quite widespread, and thanks to the various events and various awareness programs that we had been doing in the Faculty of Social Sciences through the agencyhood of the Center for Women's Studies and Development. So that was the bedrock on which this whole movement stood. However, at that point of time, the Women's Studies Development Center did not utter a single word. As it happens with individuals as well as with institutions, there are high points and low points, and this incidentally was then supported by those NGOs, like for instance, Sajha Sanskriti Morcha, that popularized this movement. At some point of time, the CWDS at BHU had supported Sajha Sanskriti Manch. So ironically, now when this center was not coming up to support them, it was those NGOs that were nurtured by the center that came out to support this. And there were various ups and downs of the movement, and the women who we interviewed strongly came out with this statement that it was through the digital equipments, through the digital agencies, that they could actually do something, because they were not allowed to participate physically in the protest, and they were not expected to reveal their names. So these women, who I definitely concede were urban, were educated, were young, they were able to make a mark there. And this social media was the only thing that helped the protest to sustain, despite all these police actions against them, and reach the masses. They talked. I would like to quote one young woman who said, "I was the one who raised voice for so many things earlier also, but always was taunted by many, as I have no one who can support me. My family never liked that I get involved in any kind of activism, but when I used social media for raising my voice the first time, I came to know that many can support us, and I feel free to convey my opinion, and it was a great tool that made us able to sustain and plan strategies for fighting our cause." And one has hundreds of such responses that say that I found a platform in social media where I can talk about individual problems too, and again to express my anger, my feelings, and my views on gender issues. It's important to support those who are fighting for our cause. Came up another one who says, your own family demoralizes you when you become vocal socially, because they're afraid of your security and about your reputation. So we all know how growing up in this country, we've been constrained by this lash that if you do something, your reputation will get spoiled. The use of social media, they said, provides you social satisfaction and a way to express your feelings without getting worried about how others think about you. So, this is a longish paper on which I've based my presentation, so I cannot just go on and on about that. However, come 2023, and this is and for this movement of 2017, the end game or the conclusion was quite a relief. The university was not closed. The suspensions were taken back. The police had to withdraw those cases that it had registered against these women, and through the real press and media support also, they could succeed. And there were lots of promises that were made. The proctor who was in charge of the security of women was changed, and for the first time in the history of BHU, a woman proctor was appointed who promised that the campus is going to be better. हाँ उसमें भी आ गया it seems because I can see P there. Maybe not. Okay, okay, thank you. Can you hear me now? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. Can you see me? Can you hear me now? Hello? Yeah, right.
Yes, right, yes, right.
Okay, so very quickly, I'll take another 3 minutes. In 2023, in the end of October, beginning of November, there was a young woman from the Institute of Technology of BHU who was out with her friend. This was the midnight, and there were. I'm mute. I'm going without the video now, and she was molested. She was denuded, and her report says that she was forcibly kissed by 3 men, and a video of this molestation was taken by these 3 men, and they then they then left, and she reported this matter next morning or early morning, and an FIR was recorded. However, despite place on the campus, nothing really came out of this. So there was this social media as well. These were IIT students of BHU. They were very savvy in terms of raking these issues up. All the young men and women who were enrolled, almost all of them, they sat for dharna on the campus. And this movement, however, didn't have that reliefful conclusion. Lots of draconian laws or measures or rules were slapped on them, including threats of getting debarred from being students of IIT BHU, and there were also threats of cases being filed against them. So the reason I took up the socials, the psycho, the framework was that there, the technical this is like a seesaw. Yes. So, however, the physical space beyond the technical issues, the social space was not ready. We will not go into the details as to why this was different. Overnight, it was. I'll just take 1 more minute. Overnight, there was an assurance from the central government that there will be a wall created between General BHU campus and the campus of IT. There'll be provisions to make these IT girls safe. However, these culprits, who were traced down, by the way, were not punished, nor were the handles to harass the protesting students put at rest. So similar things, actually even more harrowing and more harassing things, happened on the same campus. And what is tragic is that instead of going 2 steps forward, the whole initiative went 6 steps backward. So it's not, I mean, these are only tools. It cannot be concluded that these tools are helpful or not. What is still remains important is how we need to still keep the awareness intact and robust so that these tools are handy and it's a happy place for us to be in place. So thank you very much once again. Apologies for this whole technical glitch. Maybe next time we'll be able to meet each other, if not in Bangalore, maybe in Pune or in Banaras or in Oslo. By the way, we are organizing a conference in Oslo in the mid of October, where I happen to be a global fellow at Peace Research Institute of Oslo on women in peace processes. And I would share the brochure with the Sudeshna ma'am, and hope to see at least some of you there. It will be on celebrating women in peace processes 25 years on. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your knowledge with us. Our final speaker for this session is Dr. Giovanna Vingeli ma'am, who will be joining us virtually. Ma'am is an assistant professor at University of Calabria. Ma'am directs its Center of Women's Studies and serves as rector's delegate for equal opportunities. Her expertise lies in feminist sociology with a focus on gender equality policies, including mainstreaming and budgeting. Ma'am researches feminist and anti-feminist movements and actively promotes gender equality through international projects and university initiatives. Ma'am is dedicated to bridging academic research with practical policy development, and particularly in women-led innovation and higher education. We warmly welcome you, ma'am. Ma'am will share her insights on data feminism. We look forward to ma'am's valuable perspectives.
For inviting me to this inspired special briefings to principal in morning everyone. I'm Giovanna Vingeli. So I'm trying the Center of Women's Studies City and for inviting me to this inspired special briefings to principal, deans, fellow professors, students. I'm sorry I cannot be there in person with you, but I have other opportunities to meet in person. And thank you again for this opportunity to give the presentation. First of all, I would like to share my screen. And my presentation is divided into two sections. In the first, the primary focus will be on the notion of data feminism as proposed by Ignazio and Klein. The second part will address the topic of gender-based violence data, with a particular focus on the existing gaps at European level. As we know, in contemporary society, data have become a central tool not only for scholars and practitioners, but also for social movements and feminism. Scholars have examined the ways in which data have been used to promote social justice and the extent to which data can be used to empower marginalized actors. Data feminism, as an academic discipline, focuses on the power dynamics that unfold in a data-driven society, considering how to apply feminist theories and principles to create a more equitable form of data science. Therefore, researchers in data feminism have explored how data have been and can be used in the service of gender equity and justice. Data feminism, as proposed by Ignazio and Klein, introduces a critical feminist theory into data science and begins with an understanding that data infrastructure and technology systems are tied to power, reinscribing forces of privilege and oppression from racist, sexist, classist, and other structures. Data feminism builds on Black feminist scholars like Kimberly Crenshaw or Jennifer Nash. Key to a data feminist approach is therefore attention to how intersecting dynamics of privilege and oppression blend together in ways that might multiply their effects. While data feminist brings critical attention to how data has historically been used by those in power to consolidate control, Ignazio and Klein argued that data might equally be used to expose injustice and rework power hierarchies. Data feminism, hereby, is a call to action for reworking power asymmetries and inequalities baked into most data practices. The arguments in their book are guided by three main questions: data science by whom, data science for whom, data science with whose interests in mind. The authors have conceptualized 7 core principles which serve as both suppositions and interrogations of what they view as the oppressive, sexist, and racist systems entangled between the interplay of data and justice. The first principle, examine power, deals with the issue of power and how it influences data science. The main theoretical framework is Patricia Hill Collins' Metrics of Domination, to provide a lens through which to understand how power works across structural, hegemonic, disciplinary, and interpersonal domains. They use the metrics of domination to discuss who typically gets to do data science, who data science is usually for, and whose interests are prioritized when data science is implemented. The fact that there is an asymmetrical distribution of power between those who extract the data and those whose data is extracted from is fundamental in understanding and challenging systems of oppression within data science. The second principle, challenge power, is less a principle and more of a call to recognize and commit to data justice that centers collaboration and equity. Ignazio and Klein noted that traditionally, data science as a field prioritized concepts such as ethics, bias, fairness, accountability over power-challenging concepts like justice, oppression, equity, and collaboration. To address this concern, counter data is introduced as a concept that can liberate oppressed populations through the quantification and visualization of structural oppression. The third principle, elevate emotional embodiment, encourages us to re-examine the false assumption that data can be from nobody. They problematize the common view that plain and unemotional data representation, like graphs, for example, are neutral and objective. They argue that these traditional approaches of data visualization are far from impartial. The fourth principle, rethink binaries and hierarchies, demonstrates how counting and measuring can be used to hold to account power and the powerful rather than remain as tools of oppression. They discuss binaries and hierarchies to demonstrate that what gets counted counts. Their fifth principle, embrace pluralism, encourages data scientists to intentionally and actively seek multiple perspectives, including the voices of those most marginalized. They argue for the emancipation of suppressed voices in all stages of data work. This concept simply allows for multiple voices to make knowledge, to produce situated and embodied positions and standpoints. The sixth principle is consider context. This principle allows those who engage with data to take a much deeper approach, one that considers culture and context. They assert that the numbers do not and should not speak for themselves, engaging feminist standpoints to urge the necessity to place data within the context in which they are produced. Letting the numbers speak for themselves is viewed as unethical and undemocratic, with potential to do more harm than good by reinforcing the unjust status quo. The seventh and final principle, make labor visible, advocates for the recognition of the many hands that work to deliver data to end users. The discussion here involves a recognition of the labor involved with data science in a capitalist society, a work that is often invisible and uncredited. The Ignatian Klein highlight historical examples of invisible labor, like slavery, for example, and link them to current practices of outsourcing and crowdsourcing data work to countries outside of the United States, and to women and people of color who work for less than minimum wage in countries with less opportunities. In the end, the Ignatian Klein encouraged us to take action in ways that may not have included or even imagined. Whether we are an activist, academic, artist, or community organizer, challenging oppression is a common goal. In this way, we can build upon data feminism by thinking about the ways in which we can transform data science through centering narratives, voices, and ideas from marginalized communities. Coming more into detail to the topic of our conference, mainstream institutions systematically fail to account for gender-based violence, at least in Europe. Against this failure, some projects are challenging the logic of data science by centering care, memory, and justice in their work. I only have time to briefly indicate some of them. The book Counting Feminicide, for example, brings to the fore the work of data activists across the Americas who are documenting femicide, drawing, for example, on data against feminicide, a large-scale collaborative research project. This project, reveals the potential of transformative data science, the use of systematic information to first heal communities from the violence and trauma produced by inequality, and second, envision and work toward the world in which such violence has been eliminated. This project shows the power of data feminism in practice, in which each woman or girl counts, and in being counted joins a collective demand for the restoration of rights and the transformation of the gendered order of the world. Data against feminicide very briefly has three key objectives: fostering an international community of practice around feminicide data, developing tools to support the collection of feminicide data from media sources, supporting efforts to standardize the production of data where appropriate. The aim of this project is not only to collect or aggregate data, but rather to support the already existing practices of activists who care for femicide data in their own context. Another feminist initiative is from Australia. people who have experienced violence and share their stories on the platform. She's a Crowd was founded by then doctoral researcher Zoe Conliffe in 2018 in the wake of the Me Too movement. The initiative's mission is to use counter data to challenge existing power dynamics and capture the full story. This project is not unique. Other initiatives have been instrumental in challenging cultures of sexual violence and misogyny through digital storytelling, mapping of incidents, and collecting bottom-up data. Another organization, for example, is Right to Be. They have a long history of using bottom-up data collection methods for advocacy activities. The overall focus of this organization is on facilitating what has been referred to as a networked witnessing, which emphasizes the feeling of solidarity and collective empowerment gained through sharing one's story through the web. So as you can see, these are mainly grassroots projects, sometimes supported by feminist scholars. But what happens at the institutional level? As anticipated in the second part of my presentation, I would like to focus on the issue of missing data on gender-based violence and femicide, focusing on the European experience. In the past decade, the European Union and its member states have taken a number of steps in an effort to eradicate violence against women. In June 2023, the European Union ratified the Istanbul Convention, and in May 2024, the European Union adopted the first directive on combating violence against women and domestic violence, which, among other things, criminalizes both online and offline violence, non-consensual sharing of intimate or manipulated material, cyber stalking, cyber harassment, and cyber incitement to violence and hate. In both the Istanbul Convention and the new directive, there have been repeated calls for comprehensive, regular, and comparable data collection on the prevalence of gender-based violence, because there are huge gaps across Europe. For example, Eurostat, the European Institute of Statistics, started to develop the EU-wide gender-based violence survey only in 2016, and only including a data collection from 18 member states out of 27. Data on violence against women can be obtained from different sources, including via sample surveys or from administrative institutions dealing with reported cases of violence, such as the police, justice, or health and social services. However, these capture only a fraction of the actual prevalence and incidence of violence. The difference between actual prevalence and incidence of violence on one hand and disclosed violence recorded by sample surveys on the other is what we call the gray zone. Data collection system across the EU remain very heterogeneous, as they are based on national crime statistics or other administrative data sources from the judiciary or the health system, or on the media analysis of, for example, non-governmental organization. This data vary substantially in their definitions and variables. When data are systematically corrected, and this is not always the case, there are differences across member states regarding, for example, the definitions and typology of gender-based violence. Data is therefore not comparable, and comparisons between member states are currently difficult, very difficult. There are differences in definitions, missing data, missing information, for example, on the background, motives of the cases of violence, as well as the victim-perpetrator relationship. Therefore, unreported gender-based violence is only one of the obstacles to quantifying the magnitude of the problem. The lack of accurate, comprehensive, and standardized data across the European Union makes it difficult to develop an effective and efficient strategy to eradicate gender-based violence. To understand better this problem, I'll give you an example related to femicide. Femicide should be the easiest data to collect, given the limited yet atrocious numbers. But femicide is a phenomenon captured partially through national administrative data. For example, reports by the European Institute for Gender Equality, that is an agency of the European Union, and it is a primary source on the subject at European level. Unfortunately, the Institute's most recent report dates back to 2021, and they are based on data ending in 2018. The other source is Eurostat. It does not count femicides. Eurostat does not count femicides as such, but gives figures on intentional homicides, with the possibility of specifying the relationship between the victim and her attacker. This makes it possible to determine whether the perpetrator was the victim's partner or a family member. However, this is not consistent with the most comprehensive definition of femicide that is not related only to domestic violence. Cross-referencing these sources does not produce, as you can see, consistent results. If we look at the EIGE figures between 2012 and 2022, there were 4,221 femicides in Europe, bearing in mind that this data does not include 6 member states. From these member states, we don't have any information about femicide. According to Eurostat, in the same period, there were 14,143 intentional homicide of women in the European Union, 27 member states. Another source of data is the European Data Journalism Network survey, conducted in 19 countries, that recorded 6,754 femicides. This inconsistency is mirrored at the national level as well. For example, in Italy, the Ministry of Interior counts for 98 femicides in 2024, while a feminist organization like Non Una di Meno and its observatory counts for 114. The reason for this gap is that femicide is considered by the ministry only in terms of intimate relationships, thereby neglecting many murders of women that are committed outside of this context and could certainly be classified in this category. So many femicides are simply not counted. For example, murders of sex workers or women placed in institutions or transgender women. Here it counts the importance of the work of feminist organizations on this issue. Again, the problem is not only the lack of a common definition, but also the lack of factors that identify the killing of women as femicide, the lack of common variables for gathering data on the killing of women, and the problem associated with missing cases. The contested nature of what counts as femicides adds a layer of complexity as to who and what counts, depending on how it is defined. In conclusion, regular collection of data should result in better informed, evidence-based policymaking. In Europe, we lag behind. So once again, I wish to congratulate your university for organizing this conference on a timely and very important subject. Thank you. And of course, I'm available for further information and exchanges. Have a great conference.
Thank you, ma'am, for your enlightening thought. Now, I invite our esteemed chairperson, Professor R. Indra ma'am, to share ma'am's reflection and summarize the key takeaways from our discussion. Ma'am, we look forward to your valuable insights. So due to time constraints and to ensure we stay on schedule, we will not be taking questions during this session. However, if anyone has any question, we encourage you to engage with our speakers informally during lunch break. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, and I definitely will not take more than 2 minutes. After listening to the talks, and I wish we had time for QA, but unfortunately, due to the time constraint, it's not possible. All I want to say, for me, this was a learning experience. From what I learned and what little I know, you see the social media, especially about which we have been talking so much, has been used by many groups, especially right-wing and anti-democratic forces, to spread poisonous, narrow-minded, and totally undemocratic campaigns against women and gender minorities. But we have also seen how social media are being used and can be used to counter digital violence against women. Well, I believe that no medium is the ultimate, either in terms of being the best or, the worst. All I can say is that nobody can overlook a new world that the digital world has opened up for women to be visible, have their voices heard, connect with each other, learn, unlearn, and revisit their own lives and experiences. To me, cyberspace is a very powerful space for questioning and protesting, not just violence against women, but all forms of violence against human dignity. But as Professor Mary John noted, it's not something to be discarded or picked up randomly. It is for us to take the right. When I say right, I don't mean what is right for individuals, but what is right for what I call social good. The right decision about how, when, and to what extent we can use the digital spaces. See, while we are living in an age when not just half the world, but the entire world is open for women, we're also living in a world where those who dissent, differ, disagree, and question are not really tolerated. But I think that the time has come for us to speak and of course, not undermining the role of the print or the electronic media. The cyberspace has the power to carry far and wide, sensible, and sane voices. But it is this dimension of the digital world that needs to be explored. Just to say a few words about cyberfeminism, also referred by many as fourth wave feminism, I think that the interface between the feminist movement and the cyber world needs to be researched more, and case studies of how the cyber world has stood in support of the movements for gender justice need to be highlighted. I'll close by conveying my appreciation to the Center for Women's Studies, Bangalore University, and the Law College for organizing this conference and opening up the stage for a discussion on a theme of critical importance for our times and lives. I thank Dr. Sudeshna, Dr. Satish Gowda, and Dr. Lakshmi Devi for this opportunity. I want to end by saying that I will especially call upon young students to come out and speak against injustices, as I believe they have a major responsibility in carrying forward the movement for gender justice and all forms of justice for that matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. A heartfelt thank you to all our esteemed speakers for sharing their invaluable insights with us today. We truly appreciate your time and contribution. We have now reached the conclusion to preliminary session 1. Lunch has been arranged for all. Please be back by 2 p.m. as we resume preliminary session 2. Thank you.